Once more, please give rise to bodhicitta. Listen with bodhicitta. So we'll continue where we left off. Specific points on the different stages of receiving blessings, the approach, and so forth. First of all, in general, to approach an authentic teacher, the source of all perfection and virtue, and so on, to then please that teacher with great respect, and thereby properly receive the maturing empowerments and instructions, and acquire the treasure of the teacher's mind. This is the approach. Whatever practice you're doing can be condensed into the approach phase, accomplishment phase, and activity phase, these three. There is nothing greater than approaching, relying on the teacher. Nothing superior to this. As it says, the source of all perfection and virtue is one's root guru, one's root gurus. They are the wellspring of all genuine good and excellence. As said, there is no Buddha. There's never been a Buddha who has not relied on a teacher. Prior to the appearance of the gurus, no Buddhas have ever appeared. Every Buddha has come about through relying on their guru, through the kindness of their guru. When we speak of a guru, a qualified guru, talking about a guru qualified with in terms of the threefold qualities of being learned, disciplined, and benevolent, and so on. So these and other qualities are enumerated in scriptures, such as the treasure of precious qualities. I won't attempt to repeat them here, but we covered all these crucial points in the opening chapter of this text, the explanation of how to follow a spiritual guide, the route of the path. So a qualified teacher is one who is free of the 8 worldly concerns, one who is not tangled up with concerns about wealth and name and fame, respect and the like. A guru who is free of worldly concerns, who has pure samaya, completely pure samaya, and so on, this and many other qualities. So these days, when you really look at the qualities that a teacher should have, it's difficult to find any teachers these days in the current age who really embody all of them. But anyway, one should follow one's teacher in this way, approach the authentic teacher with great respect physically, verbally, and mentally. So as you said, at best, making the pleasing offering of practice, middling, pleasing offering of physical and verbal service, and at the very least, the pleasing offering of material goods and so on. Or we could say at best mentally, middling, verbally, lesser, at least physically. We should do whatever we can according to our means to follow the teacher, to offer service to the teacher in these ways. So as Jing Minpa says in his own autobiography, more than a whole room of aristocrats and wealthy people, a single sincere student pleases me much more. So a single student, maybe even if they're impoverished, even if they're just a shaggy beggar, if they are sincere about their practice, that pleases me much more than being greeted and honored by lots of aristocrats and wealthy, powerful people. It seems Jing Minpa did have a lot of wealthy patrons and supporters. More than 100 of those. More than 100 rich sponsors. One impoverished practitioner pleases me more. So I would choose to have one impoverished practitioner student than 100 millionaire patrons. So this is how a genuine teacher will be. They will value sincere practitioners, regardless of, even if they're impoverished and have nothing to offer, they'll value them more than a lot of rich sponsors who make fancy offerings to them and so on. And this also tells us how we should offer to the Guru, right? How the supreme type of offering is an offering of practice. That is the best offering, the best way to please the Guru, to serve the Guru with our own practice, not with material goods. And these days, we're all very caught up with titles and stated hierarchy and so on. And you have very high lamas bestowing titles like Kempo and Tulku and even Terton and so on to all sorts of people overseas in Taiwan and the West and what have you, and giving the people these sorts of titles, even like I said, saying that some people are Tertons, Treasure of Venus, or at least giving like supportive letters, letters of approval. This is very it's So we see a lot of this around Taiwan and the West, all over the place. People who say they are Kempos and Trukus and Tertons and what have you, who place themselves up on high thrones, and but are very dubious in character, dubious of dubious qualifications. So maybe there's not something so surprising about people just like charlatans and frauds. People claiming to be something that they're not. I mean, that happens. But when you have like a fraudulent teacher, someone who claims to be like some great master when they're not, and then someone who is actually a great master, like an established teacher, then writing supportive letters for these fraudulent people and supporting them in various ways, that's a pretty troubling situation, right? And this seems to be happening all over the place these days. Well, at least it seems to be happening sometimes these days. So we should be very careful about these sorts of situations. You end up with these fraudulent people being then approved and backed up by sort of genuine, respectable teachers sometimes, and then all sort of troubling, embarrassing things that end up happening, and everyone ends up criticizing each other, students, teacher, student, and they all end up breaking their samaya.
lama chung chung so ma lama chambu so ge sab sab chu du ma do ke
So actually the teachers in high positions, teachers who are respected and in positions of authority, who have a high status or high position, they themselves need to be very careful, because if they lend their support by writing a letter of approval or something for a fraudulent teacher, then they can end up this can end up causing a lot of problem and really contributing to a lot of damage and destruction. So the intention might be to support the teachings, but it ends up actually destroying the teachings, doing a lot of damage to students and the tradition both. So anyway, this is something to be very cautious about. Now back to the text. So we have the following the teacher, and the first stage of following the teacher, which is approach, the second stage of following the teacher, which is accomplishment, the third stage of following the teacher, which is activity. So having attained to accomplish oneself, one then does whatever one can to benefit the doctrine and beings, and especially to propagate the essential teaching of the Supreme Vehicle, meaning the teachings of luminous great perfection. This is the activity. To engage in such activities, one needs to receive the teacher's explicit permission, explicit authority. One needs to be authorized by one's teacher and have your teacher tell you, okay, you are now qualified to engage in this activity. I give you permission to do this. I command you to do this, whether it be teaching, empowering others, instructing others, or even something much more simple like doing fire pujas. You need your teacher's permission to engage in such activities for the benefit of beings. You cannot just authorize yourself, as so many people are these days. Also, Mapa said to Jesam Milarepa when sending him off to the mountains, he said, there will come a time when you develop the devotion, uncontrived devotion that sees me as Buddha in person. When you develop overwhelming devotion, overwhelming compassion for all beings, where you gain stable recognition, naked, direct recognition of the natural state. When you reach this point, then that is the time for you to start gathering students of your own, to helping students of your own. So Mabalot Sawa gave us very clear guidelines to Jesam Milarepa, and that's how it goes. These days people are doing a lot of questionable, strange things. Or people think, in a very perverse ways, like, oh, well, the teachers, the higher teachers are doing this and that, so surely I can do the same. Like as if that justifies it. But if just the fact that people in high positions are behaving in questionable ways, that doesn't justify their behavior. Or just because the majority are behaving in questionable ways, that doesn't justify their behavior, right? Like when I say that speak out against what a lot of monasteries are doing these days by setting up hotels or restaurants, basically setting up businesses, profit-making businesses under the name of their monastery. I say this is incorrect. This is actually in discord with the way a monastery is to be managed, with Buddha's advice for managing a sangha. And then one of my relatives said, in response, he said, Rinpoche, you shouldn't say things like that. you shouldn't say things like that. You know, that doesn't go, because these days everyone's doing that. Like even really high lamas are running hotels and restaurants and stuff at their monastery to make money. And I said, you know, that just because a lot of high people, just because some high powerful people are doing something, or because a lot of people are doing something, that doesn't mean that it's right, right? But these days, that's often how we think. And because a lot of teachers in high positions are doing questionable things, that doing things that actually don't align with the teachings, then the students kind of below them, so to speak, looking up, they think, oh, well, if they're doing it, then it must be all right, and so they follow suit. But this is just such a perverse, mistaken way of thinking. Just because someone powerful does something doesn't mean that the action is correct, that it's okay, right? You still need to discriminate. You need to maintain some integrity and discrimination. Just because so-and-so is doing something doesn't mean that it's okay. And we have to be especially careful about these days when there is a lot of questionable behavior and questionable behavior going on. It's by following these stages that one will fulfill the wishes of the knowledge holders of the past and hold the lineage. It's in this way that you will become a lineage holder, an upholder, someone fit to uphold and transmit the Guru's lineage. When we talk about hold the lineage, so in Tibetan this term has also has the connotation of like a family, being a family heir, you know, blood relative, but that's not what we're talking about here. We talk about the Buddha's offspring, 3 different types of offspring the Buddha has. Offspring of body, speech and mind. So the offspring of mind are the heart disciples of the Buddha, the heart disciples of a guru. One who is, if you follow the teacher in this way, you will become fit to uphold the Guru's lineage. You'll become a heart disciple. We could say a heart heir or offspring. One will obtain accomplished for oneself and benefit other beings. As I said, if you gain realization and you thereby gain the ability to genuinely benefit beings, then you have an obligation to do so. But until you reach that point where you have genuine realization and have the genuine ability to benefit beings, then you do not yet qualify, you are not yet fit to engage in the activities of teaching and so on. You are not yet able to benefit beings. In particular, on the outer level, having gained the certainty that the triply kind teacher is the embodiment of all refuges. Triply kind teacher refers to a teacher who has shown one the kindness of bestowing empowerment, transmission, tantric transmission, and pith instructions. We've mentioned this before, right? I said the teacher who gives one empowerment is very kind, but the teacher who also gives you transmission is 3 times more kind. On top of that, the teacher who also gives you instructions, yet again, 3 times more kind. So the kindest teacher is the one who shows you all 3 kinds of the types of these kindness. They are the embodiment of all refuges. Pray to them with intense yearning and so on. This is the devotion of approach. On the inner level, the secret mantra vehicle method of purifying ordinary appearances and so on into the infinite pure display of the teacher's 3 secrets. This is the accomplishment. So actually, to really explain this, we need to talk about the Guhyagarbha Tantra. So when I was younger, when I first met Kinran Vishay, I didn't have any formal education in the scriptures when I first met him and started following him. But I remember a lot of things he said back then. And now that I have engaged in a lot more study, I can see that actually so many of the things he said were in perfect accord with the Guhyagarbha Tantra, real expressions of the teachings of the Guhyagarbha Tantra. So one of the things Kinran Vishay would often say is that back then, a lot of teachers were starting to be invited to the West and traveling here and there and teaching. Khyentse Rinpoche was also invited, but he did not go. He was not really impressed or interested in traveling overseas. And he would say, these days so many teachers are traveling overseas, but in my opinion, there's only 2 masters alive who can be of genuine benefit to people in the West. This is Khyentse Rinpoche and Khyentse Gyugyun Rinpoche. Why? Because they have liberated their beings through realization, and therefore they have the power to benefit others with compassion, with uncontrived compassion that stems from their personal realization, their personal liberation. So if one is realized and one is liberated, one is endowed with those 2 qualities, one has gained realization, and through realization one has liberated one's being, then one has the ability to ripen others through compassion. And one therefore has the obligation to do so, to ripen beings in all manner of ways, through the 4 activities of pacifying, increasing and sowing, through union, liberation, whatever means possible. That's the qualifications. That is what qualifies one to be able to benefit beings. Realization and liberation. Not just knowing how to do a ritual, play the Dhamma, or do some Lama dance, lead a puja. That does not qualify you to benefit beings. On the secret level, to take the ultimate absolute nature, the primal wisdom, that is the essence of the empowerment, as the path, and to grasp the ultimate accomplishment, the desired goal, this is the activity. So, to be qualified to enact activity, meaning compassion activity for the benefit of beings, then what qualifications does one need? Well, one needs to have realized, to attain to realization, and through realization to have liberated one's being. These are the qualities one needs from one's own side, realization and liberation. Then you're qualified to engage in activity, compassionate activity for the benefit of beings. Just like we see Jessen Milarepa, so previously I said it was Mapa Lotsawa saying to Jessen Milarepa these guidelines for when he'd be ready to teach others. I apologize, I think it was actually Jessen Milarepa saying to Dhamma Rinpoche, Lord Gampopa. Anyway, those clear guidelines about the level you need to reach before you're fit to engage in such activities, teaching, gathering students and so on, and benefiting beings in that way. So one begins by clearly visualizing the support for empowerment. According to the text, one then condenses the essential points of accumulation, purification and increase with the 7 branches. So it's through the practice of the 7 branches we can accumulate merit, purifying obscurations, and increase with intense faith and devotion. So not mere lip service or contrived devotion, but intense wholehearted devotion. One prays one pointedly, evokes the teacher's wisdom, mind, by reciting the mantra, the Vajraguru mantra. Finally, one receives the blessings in the path empowerment, the emanation and dissolution of rays of light. By the force of one's devotion, the support for empowerment, meaning the Guru visualized, the Guru present before one melts into light and dissolves into one. And the teacher's mind blends indistinguishably with one's own, like water added to water. So those who practice the Vajraguru mantras, students of mine who practice the Vajraguru mantra, a lot of the lay students, are engaged in the accumulation of the Vajraguru mantra, and some of them have come to be and requested instructions on the nature of mind, like extra instructions on the nature of mind, and I said there's no need for that. Practice the Vajraguru mantra as instructed as you're doing, and at the end of that practice, mingle your mind with the Guru's wisdom, and if you practice like that, you will reach the point eventually where you arrive at the nature of mind, where you arrive naturally in the natural state, and you gain recognition. Recently there was an old student, lay person, who'd done a lot of this practice, Vajraguru mantra, practice like this. He was a seemingly ordinary person, and when they died recently, they said to their family and friends, they said, "You don't need to do anything for me, you don't need to do any pujas or anything like that. I'm fine, I'm sorted, I can look after myself." They had complete confidence from practicing in this way. They gained recognition and complete confidence in the nature of mind, in their own realization. They said, "If you want to do some feast offerings and make some offerings in my name, then feel free to do so, but I don't need you to do that." And said, if it's going to reassure you to go to Rinpoche and ask him to guide my consciousness in the bardo, feel free to do so, but I don't need that. I'm completely confident. This person was a seemingly ordinary person, a lay student, who the only practice they'd done in their life was the Vajraguru mantra, accumulation. They didn't know how to do pujas, sadhanas, lama dances or anything like that. But look how effective their practice was. They died peacefully with so much confidence and dignity. That's kind of the level that they died better than a lot of supposed lamas die, right? And they died sitting up in meditation. Let's say it doesn't guarantee, just the fact that someone dies like sitting upright in the meditation posture, that doesn't guarantee that they've had a good death. It's not a guaranteed sign of realization. So it's not like a vital point. But anyway, this person died in such a beautiful way. So that is the strength of this kind of practice. Supplicating the Guru, blending your mind with theirs, with their wisdom, and resting like that, resting in evenness without contrivance. In the past in Dzogchen there was a Trulku Lama, Dzogchen Lama. When it came for them to die, they said, "Oh, I've reached the point of death. Now saddle up my horse." They had a really great horse. It seems maybe this was like during the Cultural Revolution or during the Troubles. He put on his best clothes, best robes. He wasn't showing any signs of illness, but he said, "It's come time for me to die." He said, "Saddle up my horse." He had a really fine horse, a white grey horse. Put on his best clothes, he got on his horse, and he said, "I'm going off to Zangdokpari, to the glorious Kabakal Mountain. Anyone want to come with me?" And no one said anything, no one spoke up. He said, "Anyone want to come with me?" No one spoke. And so he galloped off into the direction of glorious Kapakala Mountain and passed away. So the great masters, the accomplished masters, they have complete mastery of their life force over their time of death, how they die. There's another story about a Lama who passed away in the middle of a great assembly in public. He performed po on himself, transference of his own consciousness, shouted pe, and right there in front of everyone, he died. With perfect control. So if we can, like this old lay practitioner I mentioned a moment ago, who spent many years practicing the Vajraguru mantra, and when it came time for them to die, they were totally reassured, totally composed and confident. They said, "You don't need to do anything for me. I don't need any help. You don't need to worry about me. If you can reach that point and die like that, that'd be pretty fantastic, right? But understand that it takes time to reach that point. It's not just a little bit of practice that can bring you to that point." It takes significant accumulation, significant purification, significant training. If you spend your life accumulating non-virtue, performing harmful deeds, well, you see this with people who've lived very negative lives. when it comes to their death, they see appalling, terrifying things. They are haunted by their evil deeds, and they die in the most horrific way, gasping for breath, clawing at their chest, calling out for help. That is the way people who've lived a negative life will die. Patrul Rinpoche talks about this, right? On the other hand, if you live a life of Dharma, you can die with assurance, composure, bliss and ease. So I say this again and again to the students who are practicing the Vajraguru mantra. You don't need extra instructions on the nature of mind. You don't need some extra teaching. Practice the Vajraguru mantra with devotion and faith. And when you reach the end of your session, dissolve Guru Rinpoche into you and dissolve your mind and his wisdom like water into water, and rest in that state of vivid ease, free of contrivance, that state of vivid awareness, without contriving, altering, or doing anything. That is it. There is really nothing greater than that. That is exactly what the pointing out instructions are introducing you to. That state of vivid, uncontrived awareness. You don't need some extra instruction to add some extra layer, something special to your practice. Just practice like this, as Drizhi Rinpoche is teaching here, as I often teach the students doing Vajraguru. That is the nature of mind, practicing the nature of mind. So, the previous Senka Rinpoche, he would give pointing out instructions, such profound pointing out instructions, potent instructions to all of the people in his where he was living. I can't remember the name of the valley, but anyway, old and young, male and female, the lay students. It became just a common occurrence for rainbows to appear when people died away. Pretty much everyone stayed and took them when they died, because they'd received these profound instructions from him and practiced so sincerely. So that was how it was with the previous Senka Rinpoche. But that said, it's not necessary to receive such. That doesn't mean it's necessary to receive some special pointing out instructions, like separate instructions. To practice the Vajraguru mantra as taught with real devotion, a pure heart, and to practice like this, resting, blending your mind with the Guru's wisdom mind, like water added to water, and resting in that state. Then through that you will come to recognize the nature of mind. That is the practice. That is it, basically. So if you're practicing the Vajraguru mantra, if you're one of these students who've made the commitment to do 10 million Vajraguru recitations and so on, but you think like there's some extra teaching that you haven't got that you need, and you feel discontent, well, don't feel discontent. You have everything you need. The heart of the practice is summed up in that practice you're doing. This is another recent master. When he died, he said, when I die, all I need you to do for me is say into my ear, recite into my ear the name of my Guru, the name of my Gurus. They are Vajradhara in person, Samanta Vajra in person. That's all I need. I don't need other rituals or prayers or anything. So that shows, that's the sign of a practitioner who has recognized the inseparability of their mind and the Guru's wisdom mind, who has merged their mind with the Guru's mind. He said, that's all I need. Recite my Guru's name as a reminder. This was the previous Sangye Nyingpa Rinpoche. I read this in Du Khyentse Rinpoche's life story. The current Sangye Nyingpa Rinpoche's predecessor and his predecessor was a direct disciple of Mipa Rinpoche. These are an extraordinary line of masters, Sangye Nyingpa Rinpoche and his predecessors. Now at the top of page 246, this is the very nature of the Buddhist wisdom, the great self-manifestation, free of bliss, self-manifestation or self-display. We talk about self-display, or we can rangnang in Tibetan, self-display, self-manifestation, natural display. So we talk a lot about this, but who actually realizes it? That all appearances and occurrences are the natural display, the self-manifestation of the absolute nature. But if we practice like this, visualizing the Guru melting into light, dissolving into one, so that the teacher's wisdom mind, devoid of thought, blends indistinguishably with one's own, like water added to water, and one rests in evenness, maintaining without tension or effort the very nature of the Buddha's wisdom. Well then, one can realize, one can recognize the nature of self-display. One can realize what's meant by self-display, self-manifestation. Now visualizing the object of prayer. Here, as regards visualizing the object of our prayer, there's effectively no difference between inviting our teachings from somewhere else, like a wisdom deity, and revisualizing them. So whether you invite them, go through the act of inviting them, calling upon them and inviting them, or just revisualizing them, bringing them to mind, it doesn't make much difference. Visualize them in either way. Now, accumulating merit with 7 branches. So the first of the 7 branches is prostration, the antidote to pride. Pride is such a problematic emotion. It's such an obstacle. And prostration is an antidote, direct antidote for pride. Imagine you're emanating countless hundreds and thousands of bodies like your own, and that all beings together with you are also performing prostrations with you. So oneself surrounded by all sentient beings, limitless in number, one's mother and father sentient beings, primarily one's parents of this life, surrounded with all other sentient beings. So visualizing like that. You join your palms together, so watch Rinpoche now. You should hold your hands like that, together evenly, with a slight hollow space in between the palms, so that your joined palms are making the shape of a jewel, or as it says here, an opening lotus bud. And you raise your palms to the crown of your head, your forehead, your throat, your center of your chest, your heart, meaning the center of your chest. And then you bow down, touching your 5 points of your body, your forehead, 2 palms, 2 knees, to the ground. This is called a half prostration, or as it's translated here, a short prostration. On the other hand, hitting the ground with one's body, stretching one's whole body out on the ground, is what we call a full-length prostration. The Vajrayana prostration is generally said to be a full-length prostration. A common prostration is the half prostration. There are a lot of other types of prostration as well. So, different types of prostration. The word prostration could also be translated as like just paying homage, gestures of paying homage. So, there's a Nepali tradition of bending down and sort of embracing the teacher's feet or touching your head to their feet. That's also a style of prostration. Anyway, there are these and other types. The first of these, so it says the first of these, half prostration, is the method of the common vehicle, while the second is the special method of the mantra vehicle, Vajrayana. The prostration my teacher taught and practiced was the full-length prostration, because this is more powerful. He said this is more powerful in purifying obscurations and has greater benefits. Inasmuch as the preliminary practice constitute a means to accumulate merit and purify obscurations. So in our tradition, while practicing the Satya Ngondro, our practice tradition is to do half prostrations in the Satya Ngondro, and do those half prostrations while accumulating refuge. In the Trema Ngondro then, one practices full-length prostrations, and one does those full-length prostrations with the 7 branches in Guru Yoga, within the 7 branches. So, in many other Jujum Tesa traditions, practice traditions, then prostrations are accumulated as explained here, the full-length prostrations during the 7 branches at the beginning of Guru Yoga. So in addition, though, one still accumulates, regardless, one accumulates 100,000 recitations of the refuge verse, even if one is not combining those with prostrations. So probably most of the people here are doing it that way. Doing full length for the Satya Ngondro, doing full length prostrations with the 7 branches. But as I said, in our the Namkyung tradition of Jagir Rinpoche, we do it in a slightly different way. As for the benefits of prostration, you'll have the beauty of a fine complexion and noble speech. Noble speech. Whatever you say, people will trust you, believe you. Your speech will have real weight, like the speech of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Whatever His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, people across the board respect it, right? They listen, pay attention, they respect and believe what he says. This is comes from his own merit, right? There are other people who can speak very beautifully, very poetically, very sweetly, but their words carry no weight. People don't believe what they say, no matter how sweet it sounds. You can also look at Chögyam Rinpoche. Even when he would say sort of strange things, people would just regard them as so important and give them so. All his words held so much weight. Everyone respected and revered everything he said, even the funny, jokey things. So one time the Sikkim king I was with Yangtang Rinpoche in Sikkim, and it was cold at night, and so in the evening we would light a fire and sit by the fire talking. I think Yangtang Rinpoche was teaching me one of the Guyagaba Tantra commentaries at this time. Anyway, in the evening we were sitting by the fire, and Yangtang Rinpoche was telling lots of stories about Chögyam Rinpoche. Chögyam Rinpoche never ate meat, right? He was a vegetarian. And students, his good students would also not eat meat, following his example. Likewise, his good students would never travel overseas, following his examples. So there was such a student of Chögyam Rinpoche. So anyway, Chatur Rinpoche also didn't eat eggs, so again his devoted students would also not eat eggs, following his example. Anyway, so Rinpoche retold this story about one of Chatur Rinpoche's students. So anyway, sorry, I'm getting a bit jumbled about the places and so on. Excuse me. So we're in Sikkim. Rinpoche's with Yangtang Rinpoche, and they're talking about Chatur Rinpoche. There's a student of Chatur Rinpoche. Rinpoche's there. A student who didn't eat meat, also didn't eat eggs, because, it's following his guru's example. And then I asked him, you also don't eat eggs? He said, no, I don't eat eggs. I once asked Chatur Rinpoche about this, because some people were saying, if you eat the eggs of battery hens, they're not fertilized, so there's no negative karma in eating those eggs. So I asked Chatur Rinpoche about this one day, and he said, better not to eat those unfertilized eggs, better not to eat them. There's no nourishment in them, better not eat them. I don't know if this translates, but it sounds very funny and kind of sweet in Tibetan. And it's kind of silly, but still the student and everyone who heard that is taking it so seriously, regarded that statement with so much reverence, So, they don't even eat eggs that are not fertilized. Anyway, all of this was about the benefits of prostration. So in the past there was someone, Buddhist time, there was someone making prostrations to one of a stupa in Swayambhu, a stupa in which there were ring cells and blessings from the previous Buddhas. And one of the students said, Buddha, I can see that someone is in Swayambhu is making prostrations to this stupa. What karmic ripening will come from this? A single prostration, what are the benefits of that? A single prostration performed with great respect, pressing one's 5 limbs to the ground, is so powerful, one will attain the royal state of a universal emperor as many times as the number of particles of dust beneath one's body down to the lower steps of hell. So these are the words of Buddha. The words of Buddha spoken in this context. When a student asked them about the karmic ripening of someone making the prostrations to this stupa. Anyway, these are some of the extraordinary karmic ripenings and benefits that come from making prostrations, but making prostrations with humility, right? With humility and respect. If you make prostrations with pride and conceit, no matter how many thousands and thousands you make, you're not going to attain these benefits, right? So these are just some of the benefits from making prostrations. As we see from these quotations of the sutra, this sutra requested, the sutra that records some teachings requested by Ananda. When first we make prostrations by touching our 5 points of our body down to the ground, right? This represents the 5 types of beings. And as we bow down and then stand up, this represents leading all sentient beings to liberation. So now some more details about actually how to make a prostration. When you're accumulating prostrations, you should do so on flat, even ground. You should not accumulate your prostrations on an upward slope or on a big raised platform, like an upward slanting platform. That means you don't actually lower your body fully down to the ground, fully horizontal to the ground. That actually can be a cause of negativity more than positivity. So you begin your prostration by joining your palms to your heart. This is acknowledging the presence of Buddha nature, and also recollecting bodhicitta, your motivation, thinking, I'm doing this prostration to purify the misdeeds and obscurations of all beings, to lead all beings to enlightenment. And again, how do you join your palms? As I'm showing. And then you raise your hands up to the crown of your head like that. When you do that, placing your hands at the crown of your head, you should think I have a white jewel on the crown of my head, and in front of me the refuge is the refuge tree, the field of accumulation, of course, right? Guru Rinpoche and so on, as we've described before. And you think, now I'm standing before Guru Rinpoche, and now white light rays radiate out from my forehead to Guru Rinpoche's forehead. Invoke him, and he then sends out a great mass of white light rays that dissolve into my forehead and purify all of my misdeeds of the body accumulated since time without beginning up until now. Then as you place your hands at your throat, you imagine that you're holding in your palms a red jewel that radiates out red light rays, and the same thing happens in Guru Rinpoche, who then from his throat he radiates out a great mass of red light rays that dissolve into your throat, purify you of all of the misdeeds of speech from time without beginning. Then when you hold your hands at your palm center, you imagine you're holding a blue jewel. And the same thing. This radiates out light rays to Guru Rinpoche's heart, invoking him. He sends back blue light rays, dissolve into your heart, and purify your misdeeds and obscurations of mind. So you visualize this again and again. As you're making prostrations, and all the time you visualize your father on your right, your mother on the left, and surrounding you all are the sentient beings. And while doing this, you recite the refuge verse, if that's where you're accumulating your prostrations, or the relevant liturgy. And in front of you, you need to visualize your enemies. Enemies are generally terrible things, but from the perspective of Dharma, they are priceless. They are so priceless and kind to us. They give us so much opportunity. Like Jason Milarepa, his aunt and uncle, who abused him all throughout his childhood. They are enemies, right, in the mundane sense, but as Milarepa said, without their kindness, I never would have. They actually showed me great kindness, because without them and everything they did, I never would have met Mapalosawa. And there's also the story of the Lama from Kham, who, when making pilgrimage to Lhasa, was attacked by this famous bandit and troop of bandits who stole everything he had. He went from being rich man to a beggar in a single afternoon, and as a result, he ended up leaving all his monastery management and busy activities, devoting himself to practice, and he became an accomplished master. And he would always then, when he became a teacher in his own right, he would always pray, make a prayer to the bandits who'd attacked him. He would say, it's because of their kindness that I've attained accomplishment, that I've ended up where I am. So actually enemies cause us problems, right? But it's actually it's often problems that can benefit us. It's often problems that are actually the source of great benefit, more benefit than seemingly conducive circumstances. The enemies and misfortune can be real blessings in disguise. As we say in the Truma liturgies and so on, bless me that I may take adversity onto the path. Bless me that adversity may become the path. This means that we need to be able to take illness, unhappiness, misfortune, loss onto the path, embrace such adversities and transform them into the path. That's the point, right? To be able to transform these circumstances. So the same goes when we are doing prostrations. We visualize our enemies in front of us, right in front of us, parents on either side, and all other beings, friends and so on behind us and in the surrounding areas. So we're still struggling to get through enough pages each day, so maybe we will end up having to extend the program by one day. Let's see what happens. So we've just talked about how to make a prostration. If you leave this teaching just knowing how to, with some clarification about how to make a good, proper prostration, well, that's really something. Some valuable knowledge to take away with you. So this style of making prostrations comes from Patrul Rinpoche and was transmitted through his student Nyosho Lungtao. So, I told this story before. One day Nyosho Lungtao went to see his teacher, went up to Patrul Rinpoche's cabin or residence, and instead of knocking, knocking at the door straight away, he kind of peeked in through the door, or through the tent flap, and just looked in without announcing himself. This is actually a very bad, rude thing to do, right? To not announce yourself when you arrive somewhere, and just anyway, Patrul Rinpoche was in his room doing prostrations, and he sensed that someone was there. He said, "Who's there?" And Nyosho Lungtao said, "It's me, Master, it's me." And then he said, "Master, these days, most of us don't even know how to do proper prostrations. How do you do prostrations?" Then Patrul Rinpoche said, "Well, if someone shows interest, and we should teach them, so come and I'll show you." And then he taught Nyosho Lungtao how to do prostration, and that instruction has been passed down until now. If you make one prostration decently, one decent prostration, that prostration can accumulate so much merit, purify so much negativity. But if you make prostration disrespectfully, distractedly, then not much benefit will happen to that. Also, if you make prostrations in a crooked way, incorrectly, like with your leaning to one side or with your face turned to one side, actually that can create a strange karma, like the karma of being born with a crooked spine. When you do prostrations, you need to do them, you need to focus right. You need to do them in focus while reciting the liturgy and so on. Not while talking and gossiping or stopping every now and then to talk to your friend. I haven't seen this, but I hear from people that down in Bodha, the stupa, a lot of people that do prostrations like that, like prostrating while gossiping to their friend next to them. quite literally. If you do that, then better just to do a dance, right? Wouldn't that be more beneficial? So if we do prostrations, we should do them properly. So in the past, when the Mapa still was not teaching, refused to give Milarepa any further teachings, Mapa's consort wife, Mima, gave Mapa a gift, some gifts, and sent him off with a letter that she forged to make it look like it was from Mapa. Sent Mapa off to one of Mapa's other senior students and said, go and request teachings from him. And when Mapa arrived at this, when Milarepa arrived at the senior student's practice place, Mapa greeted him offered prostrations, and immediately the senior student could tell that this was a fellow disciple of Mapa, and he took off his hat in respect. So this is how it should be. Actually, even the way you make prostrations should signify something, right? So there's stories, anecdotes like this from Longchenpa and his guru as well. Just to know from my side that story about Pacharam Rishi and Nyosho Longdok, where Nyosho Longdok enters Pacharam Rishi's room and Pacharam Rishi shows him how to prostrate. So previously I mistranslated that a few days ago. I said Nyosho Longdok came into the room and made prostrations, and then Pacharam Rishi scolded him and told him how to prostrate. I think that was my mistake previously. So the correct story is how I translated it today. Anyway, the main point is Pacharam Rishi taught Nyosho Longdok how to translate, and we have those instructions passed down to us, right? So anyway, like I said, we need to prostrate properly, and also not too fast, not too slow, but also not too fast. Like you see some people when they're accumulating prostrations, they do these full prostrations like a rocket, like it's dizzying just to watch them. That's also not so good. In Tibetan there are a lot of different, as we could say, dialects. These days there are some children of people from, say, Humla and Dopo and so on, and they say to their parents, Mum, Dad, please, what language are you speaking? Speak proper Tibetan. And the parents reply, I am speaking Tibetan. And they say, well, you're not speaking proper Tibetan. And they say, I am speaking proper Tibetan. There's all these different dialects, and there's often the idea that the dialect spoken in central Tibet is like pure Tibetan, and all other dialects, especially those spoken by the border regions, are sort of corrupt. But actually that is the opposite. That is absolutely not the case. The most correct, authentic Tibetan dialects are actually those spoken in the border regions like Humla and Dopo and so on, Kamarong, Mubarong, Mustang and so on. These are authentic, uncorrupt, corrupt-free forms of Tibetan. They have not changed for centuries and centuries, whereas dialects spoken in Lhasa and so on, they've changed. They've had so many influences over the centuries, right? So they've changed a lot actually, and you could say they've been corrupted in that way. What's going on with the tent? Is the roof about to collapse? Anyway, that was a note about dialect. So we're now in number 2, the second of the 7 branches offering. Arrange whatever material offerings you have, using them as support for your concentration. Mentally offer your own body or wealth. Emanate infinite clouds of offerings arising from the display of concentration. As described in the life story of the sublime Samantabhaja. There's a long story we could tell here. And the Bodhisattva Samantabhaja made this extraordinary offering. Offering spouses to those without a spouse, eyesight to those lacking eyes, children to those lacking children. It's an infinite, extraordinary offering. And this is where the King of Aspiration prayers, the prayer of Samantabhaja comes. So then we have a quotation in the Sutra of the Precious Lamp. So one of the earlier translations of the title of this sutra was quite unusual. Instead of the ordinary word for lamp, it said talala, so the precious talala, which then became kind of synonymous with lamp. But where does that actually come from? Well, there's a very sweet story of how one of the earlier Lotsawas was once asked, someone once pointed to an offering lamp on the shrine, a butter lamp, and it was the flame was blowing, was wavering in the wind. And they said, "What is that?" And instead of saying it's an offering lamp or it's a lamp, because the flame was kind of waving side to side, he said "dalala," which is like an onomatopoeic word. That's definitely not the right pronunciation of that. I hope you know what I mean. To describe the wavy flame. Anyway, that's where that unusual rendering came from. Kimbadoza Rinpoche would tell that story. We need to make offerings beyond imagination, offerings like the sublime Bodhisattva Samantabhaja, who presented clouds and clouds of offerings to the Buddhas. And he multiplied each offering that he emanated out, that he imagined and emanated out, offering goddesses, the sense pleasures, everything imaginable, he emanated out. And then he multiplied those offerings exponentially. So from the 8 offering goddesses came dozens of more offering goddesses. From all of those offering goddesses came dozens of more. So this exponential increase in multiplication of infinite types of offerings. There's really hence we always have this reference to the offering clouds of sublime Samantabhaja. This was an offering beyond the imagination, an unsurpassable offering. As a result of such an offering, we will have an abundance of riches and be worthy of universal veneration. Now, parting from confessing negative actions. Page 248. With intense remorse for all non-virtuous actions have accumulated with body, speech and mind since beginningless time. Negative actions and downfalls such as shameful deeds that are naturally negative and those that violate edicts. So there are actions like taking life, which is naturally non-virtuous, naturally harmful, right? Whether you have a vow not to kill or not. And there are certain actions like eating after noon, which are not automatically negative, but they are negative if you've pledged not to do them. Like if you've taken the full monastic vows, that involves a vow not to eat after noon. So therefore, if you have that vow and you eat after noon, you're accumulating negative karma. That said, this isn't always observed these days by monks, and there are reasons for that. Buddha did, in brief, Buddha did speak about certain exceptional circumstances where these different vows could be adapted according to circumstance, and the physical context, and also the individual's health. But it actually gave a lot of really practical advice about health. It's more than 2,000 years ago, before modern medicine and so on. It actually lines up exactly with what doctors say these days. He said you should divide your stomach into, say, 3 portions, and you should fill 1 portion with food, 1 portion with water, and always keep 1 portion empty. So this is good for your health, good for your digestion, and also good for your mind. You won't get over drowsy or lethargic. You'll remain alert. Otherwise, if we overeat, we get dull, we get fat. So fat you can barely walk around, you just waddle around. There's nothing good about that, right? So it's amazing, actually, even in terms of our health and hygiene, the wisdom of Buddha's words. So you should, apart from or confess all negative actions by means of the 4 powers, power of support, power of regret, power of applied antidote, and power of restoration. As you do so, imagine all your negative deeds and obscurations gathered in a black heap on top of your tongue. I know I'm speaking so fast. I speak so fast, far too fast for the translators. I do try and remind myself to slow down. I have this note right in front of me saying speak slowly, but it's not effective whatsoever. It is not doing anything to me. I see it right there, but it's just my habit to speak fast. And she said, I think maybe I need like a billboard in front of me saying speak slowly, but maybe even that wouldn't help. So it's like my brother who speaks really loudly. He said, you need to stop shouting, speak a little quieter. Well, for me, I speak too fast. I told my brother, Sangye Rinpoche, please, make a sign to me when I'm speaking too fast. But he is not listening, and he's not giving me a sign. Parting from our faults delivers us from the deeds that obscure the higher realms. So, now forth rejoicing, the antidote to jealousy. Jealousy is such a poisonous emotion. It makes you so unhappy, it makes all those around you so unhappy. It's so poisonous. We might not be able to rid ourselves completely of jealousy, but still we need to reduce it as much as we can. Train in this. Do whatever we can to reduce our jealousy, bit by bit. There's no point in jealousy. Meditate with a feeling of tremendous gladness from the bottom of your heart. Rejoice in all the virtue accumulated in past, present, and future, and so on. Do so from the depth of your heart. There's so many stories as well to tell about rejoicing. And also to illustrate the downfalls of jealousy. In the words of my perfect teacher, one may assess the weight of 1,000,000,000 Mount Meros. You can measure that. You cannot measure the merit of rejoicing. So there are people who are accumulating a lot of Vajraguru mantras and so on. If you can rejoice in their practice, if you can make connections with them and their practice by making some offerings to them or providing some provisions for their practice, do so sincerely, you'll accumulate a lot of merit just by virtue of that. Like the story of people going into Lhasa, you have the great Buddha statue of Lhasa, and that vast temple complex where there are so many hundreds of butter lamps and water bowls, and there's a practice people will go in and just offer a drop of water, say, into each water bowl, a drop of oil into each butter lamp, just to contribute. By contributing in that small way, they're making a connection with that larger offering, that larger merit, right? So this is such a skillful practice. So we can connect with vast sources of merit by contributing in small ways, right? Like if there's a big sock offering or something, or a big gathering, you can, for instance, there's a big sock offering, you can offer a small amount of sock, contribute to that, right? And you're joining that great source of merit. If there's a big gathering of students or practitioners, you can contribute to the cost of the tea and the food. Contribute something. And then you're joining in that great source of merit. You're joining in that. You become part of that offering, right? As is taught, as Kamal Chamle teaches in his Sukhavati prayer, if you can rid your heart of jealousy and rejoice in others' merit from the depths of your heart, then you will attain merit alongside them. Merit of rejoicing is equal to that obtained from the source of good itself, and so it cannot be measured. Fifth, exhorting the teachers to turn the wheel of Dharma, the antidote to bewilderment. Exhorting the teachers to turn the wheel of Dharma in the presence of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, teachers, spiritual friends, and so forth, those who bear the enormous responsibility of others' welfare. And who, weary and discouraged by being's ungrateful behavior, might enter the happiness of Nirvana and not continue to teach. True such teachers manifest countless thousands of billions of your own bodies, make offerings, and pray that they may constantly turn the wheel of Dharma to benefit beings with whichever teachings are appropriate. So in the past, our teacher, Lord Buddha, he traveled to Bodh Gaya, the Vajra seat. He sat down under the Bodhi tree. Through the night, he sat in meditation. As he was approaching the attainment of enlightenment, the Maras waged war on him, tried to obstruct his enlightenment. He tamed all those Maras with the power of his samadhi, manifested enlightenment at dawn. And then after manifesting enlightenment, for some time, for several weeks, he felt that even if he taught, no beings would understand his teaching. And so he remained alone in silence. Then Indra and Brahma appeared before him, offered a right turning's conch and an 8-spoked golden wheel. And they requested him to turn the wheel of Dharma, to share his teachings, to share his realization with others for their benefit. And so, in response, Buddha began to teach. He then rose, left the forest and walked to Sarnath, to what's now known as the Deer Park, and gave his first teaching on the Four Noble Truths to his 5 destined disciples, and then continued to continue to teach for the rest of his life. The benefit that is ensued from Buddha teaching turning the wheel of Dharma is limitless, impossible to describe. So, to make similar request teachers to turn the wheel of Dharma to teach. This is of enormous benefit and importance. So it's really important to request teachers to teach, to request virtuous spirituals to teach, to entreat them. That will bring benefit. It doesn't have to be like on such a grand scale as say here with thousands of people gathered together. You can be a small group of 10 or 15 people. Go to a virtuous spiritual friend, teachers in your own area, up in the mountains, wherever it is, and request them to teach, to share the Dharma with you. There's no greater way to benefit beings than teaching the Dharma, whatever Dharma it might be. So in short, sometimes someone might ask me, what can we do to improve things up in the remote areas, to improve the situation there, to preserve and spread the Dharma there. Well, there's nothing more beneficial than just educating people, right? Educating people in the Dharma, sharing knowledge of the Dharma, so that people actually understand what the Dharma is. That's more beneficial than, say, building things or building or what have you. Just sharing the basic fundamental points of the Dharma. Yeah. What is the meaning of the Mani mantra? What's the meaning of the Vajraguru mantra? What is virtue and non-virtue? How to engage in simple but effective practice? That's the most beneficial thing. So all of this is to say, there's nothing more beneficial than turning the wheel of Dharma and sharing the Dharma. So to request teachers of all kinds, in all places, to share the Dharma. This is of enormous benefit, enormous merit. I passed a young Nepalese man, listened to some of my teachings. He was very educated and just very smart young man. He said to me, in short, he said, hearing these teachings you share has such an impact on me, so much benefit when I leave and then enter the busy world again. So to teach people about refuge, bodhicitta, how to take refuge, what refuge means, how to give rise to bodhicitta, and so on. These are vital points of Dhamma, right? Vital, crucial points of Dhamma. So important to know, so beneficial to know and practice. You don't need lots of money or facilities or anything to practice these points. You just need knowledge, right? So to share that knowledge, to educate people in these important points is so beneficial and important. So I've said these things many times in the past to the people of Sikkim and others. So to this end, if you can invite Khenpos, Lubans, qualified teachers to various areas to teach on these points, request them, invite them and request them to come and teach, there's an enormous, inconceivable benefit in that. And to contribute to help that happen by contributing in whatever way. That's of enormous benefit. So it's also important that students have some confidence in their teacher. From the kind of the recipient side, they also need to have some confidence and a certain outlook, right? Otherwise, you might have a really learned, qualified teacher, but if the people listening to their teachings don't really trust them, then it's not going to stick, right? So these days, it's not that I'm very expert on learned or anything, but there seem to be quite a number of people who trust me and listen to what I say. So I need them to share what I can, right? If there are people who are interested, who are willing to listen and actually kind of pay heed, take the advice, that said, if they're sharing things and sort of trying to teach the Dharma to people who aren't listening, aren't interested, don't really respect you, that's not going to be much benefit, right? They're not going to take heed. In short, the point was for the Khenpos and Lopans, the qualified teachers here, if to those who do respect them and are interested to learn from them, then they have the obligation to share whatever knowledge they have, right? In short, that was the point. It says, exhorting the teachers to turn the wheel of Dharma, the antidote to bewilderment. Teaching and receiving the Dharma is the antidote for bewilderment, or the antidote for ignorance, not knowing the nature of things, not knowing what is correct or incorrect, not knowing what to do, what not to do. So hence the enormous benefit of requesting teachers to turn the wheel of Dharma. Now we dedicate the merit and stop here.